The entire office froze when two little girls pushed past security, walked straight up to the billionaire, and said, "Are you David Chen?" He barely breathed. Then the second girl whispered, "Because you're our father." His coffee slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. And in that single moment, 8 years of buried secrets came crashing back to life. The whole building felt cold and silent. As the twins stood in front of the massive glass door, their tiny hands clenched tightly together. They were only 7, but their eyes carried a kind of hurt that even adults could not hide. Security guards tried to stop them, but the girls moved with a strange mix of fear and courage, like their hearts were telling them to keep walking no matter what. And they did, right into the office of billionaire David Chen. For more emotional stories, make sure to subscribe now. David sat behind his expensive mahogany desk, busy signing documents worth more than anything the girls had ever seen. He didn't even look up at first, but then he heard footsteps, soft, fast, nervous. When he finally raised his eyes, he saw 2 small girls staring back at him. "Are you David Chen?" the first twin, Lily, asked with a trembling voice. David blinked, confused. Something about their faces felt familiar, too familiar. The second twin, Rose, stepped forward. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Are you our father?" The pen slipped from David's hand. His coffee cup fell, hit the floor, and shattered into pieces. He sat frozen, unable to breathe. His heartbeat echoed in his ears as the world went silent around him. And then everything stopped, like time itself refused to move. Because 8 years earlier, before these twins were even born, this story had already started. 8 years earlier, David Chen was only 28. He wasn't a billionaire then. He was ambitious, smart, and hard-working, but he still laughed easily, loved deeply, and dreamed freely. And the center of all his dreams was Sarah Martinez, the girl with warm eyes, soft hands, and a smile that made him forget every problem in his world. They weren't rich. Their dates were simple: walking in parks, eating cheap street noodles, or lying on the grass staring at the stars. Sarah worked at a tiny flower shop, always smelling like roses. David worked at his father's company, trying to prove he was more than just the son of a wealthy man. Their love felt like something strong enough to survive anything. But life is not always kind. David's father hated their relationship from the beginning. To him, Sarah was too poor, too simple, and a distraction. He wanted David to marry into a powerful family, not fall for a girl who sold flowers and lived in a small apartment. David always defended Sarah, saying she was his happiness, but his father never listened. Sarah didn't care about wealth or family status. She just wanted love, love that lasted, love that made her feel safe. For a while, she believed she had that with David. One morning, Sarah walked into a small clinic. Her hands were shaking as she waited for her results. When the doctor smiled and said, "Congratulations, you're pregnant. With twins." Tears filled her eyes. She wasn't scared. She was excited. 2 babies, 2 hearts, double love. She rushed home, almost tripping on stairs. When she showed David the ultrasound picture, he covered his mouth in shock and joy. Then he lifted her in his arms. "Twins? Sarah, this is amazing. I will marry you tomorrow if you want." Sarah laughed through tears. "Your father will never accept us." "I don't care," David said, pressing his forehead to hers. "You and our babies are my family now." For a moment, the world felt perfect. But the next morning, everything changed. Sarah was arranging roses at the flower shop when the bell above the door rang sharply. She looked up and froze. Standing there was Mr. Chen, David's father, a powerful billionaire with cold eyes and a face that never softened. He didn't bother greeting her. He didn't even pretend to smile. "My son has a brilliant future. You do not belong in it," he said, dropping a thick envelope on the counter. "Take the money, leave, and take care of the pregnancy problem." Sarah felt her stomach twist. "I don't want your money," she said with a shaking voice. "I want David. We love each other." Mr. Chen's eyes narrowed. Love. Love doesn't pay hospital bills. Love doesn't save your sick mother. He stepped closer. "I can make one phone call, and no hospital in this city will treat her. Ever." Sarah's breath caught. Her mother's condition had been worsening. Medical bills were already too much. She needed treatment urgently. But Sarah still whispered, "David will choose us. He promised." Mr. Chen smirked. "We will see." Sarah tried to calm herself, telling her heart that David would stand by her. He wasn't his father. He wasn't cruel. But when David came to the shop later, his face looked pale and troubled. Sarah rushed to him, hopeful. "David, tell your father we are getting married." He didn't look at her. His hands shook. His voice was almost too small to hear. "Sarah, maybe he's right. Maybe we're too young. Maybe the timing is wrong." Her heart cracked in 1 second. "David, what are you saying?" He took a deep breath, forcing the words out. "Take the money. Start fresh somewhere. It's better for everyone." Sarah's world shattered. "You're abandoning us? Your own babies?" David couldn't meet her eyes. "It's for the best. You'll understand, someday." Sarah felt something inside her break. She slapped him, hard. Rain began pouring outside as she ran past him, crying so loudly it sounded like pain itself. David stood there, tears mixing with the rain, but he didn't chase her. He didn't fight for her. He let her walk away. If this story touched your heart, hit subscribe. And Sarah's nightmare truly began. Pregnancy was supposed to be a beautiful journey, but for Sarah, it became months of fear, hunger, sleepless nights, and pain. She worked multiple jobs, barely earning enough for rent. Her mother grew sicker, and no hospital would give affordable treatment. Sarah knew why. Mr. Chen's threat. She spent nights crying into her pillow, whispering to her unborn daughters, "Mama is trying, my babies. I'm trying." When the day of labor came, she had no one beside her. Not David, not family, just struggling nurses in a crowded charity hospital. But when she heard the first cry, then the second, the world felt brighter for a moment. She held her twin girls close. "Lily and Rose, Mama loves you more than life." But life didn't slow down for her. Her mother died soon after, and Sarah stood at the funeral carrying 2 crying infants and a heart full of guilt. Debt collectors started coming daily. She ate less so her daughters wouldn't starve. She walked miles with them in her arms, praying for a miracle that never came. And then came the night she broke completely. Under heavy rain, with her clothes soaked and her body shaking, Sarah stood outside an orphanage. Her hair clung to her face, and her tears mixed with raindrops. She looked at her twins wrapped in the only nice blanket she had left. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, kissing their tiny foreheads. "You deserve a life I can't give you." She placed a handwritten note beside them. "Please give them a better life. Their names are Lily and Rose. I love them more than anything. Tell them their mother's heart broke the day she let them go. Sarah." She rang the bell, then hid behind a tree, watching an orphanage worker open the door. The woman gasped and carried the babies inside. Sarah collapsed on the ground, sobbing so hard it hurt. She kept looking back as she walked away, her footsteps slow, heavy, and full of regret. But fate wasn't done with these twins yet, not even close. Because the next morning, someone walked into the orphanage who would change everything for them. Grace Williams. A woman with tired eyes but a kind heart. A widow who once lost her own daughter. A nurse who worked long hours but never stopped giving love. When she saw the twins, she felt something inside her come alive again. "These angels," she whispered, holding them. "They were left here last night?" The director nodded. Their mother left a note. She loved them. Grace held the girls close, and they stopped crying instantly. "I want to adopt them," she said softly. "But, Mrs. Williams, you're not wealthy," the social worker said gently. Grace smiled with determination. "I can give them love, safety, good values. That matters more than money." And that's how Lily and Rose found their new mother. Grace worked day and night to raise them. She clapped when they took their first steps, cried on their first day of school, and packed lunches with little notes inside. "Have a great day, angels." She worked double shifts just to keep their home running, and the girls noticed. One night, when Grace came home exhausted, Lily asked, "Mama Grace, why do you work so much?" Grace kissed their heads. "Because I want you to have everything you deserve." Rose looked up. "Mama, why don't we have a father like other kids?" Grace's eyes softened, full of pain she never spoke about. "Your birth parents. They had reasons for their choices. But I chose you. You are my daughters. Love makes a mother, not blood." The twins hugged her tightly, but nothing could prepare them for what they were about to find next. Because in the back of Grace's closet was a box with their truth inside. And the day they opened it, their whole world changed. The box was old, covered in dust, and hidden deep behind folded blankets. Lily found it first while helping Grace clean the closet. She pulled it out slowly, her small hands shaking with curiosity. "Rose, look what I found." Rose turned, confused. "What is it?" The box felt heavier than it looked, like it carried years of secrets. Lily hesitated. "Should we open it? Mama Grace always says to respect privacy." Rose bit her lip. "I know. But what if this is something about us? Something important?" They looked at each other, hearts beating fast. Lily finally whispered, "Let's just check." She lifted the lid. Inside were papers, old papers, yellowed edges, stamps, signatures, dates, their names. Rose read aloud, her voice cracking. "Adoption. Papers." And then they found the note. The same note their birth mother wrote the night she left them. The handwriting was shaky, full of emotion. The girls sat on the floor reading it together, and tears rolled down their cheeks. "She loved us," Rose whispered. "She didn't leave because she didn't care." Lily wiped her eyes, but the tears kept coming. "Then why did she leave? Why didn't she stay and fight for us?" Rose placed her hand over Lily's. "Maybe she didn't have a choice." They kept digging through the box until they found something else. A small folded paper with their birth father's name. "David. Chen," Lily whispered. "That's the same name we saw on TV, right? The rich guy?" Rose nodded slowly. "But that can't be real. How can our father be a billionaire?" Lily stood up suddenly. "I'm going to check. Right now." They ran to the small school library the next day. They didn't tell Grace. They didn't tell anyone. They just ran, their hearts pulling them forward. The librarian smiled and waved, not knowing what storm the girls carried inside. They sat down in front of an old computer. "Okay," Lily whispered. "Type his name." Rose typed slowly. David Chen. The screen filled instantly. News articles, photos, videos, headlines calling him the youngest self-made billionaire. Photos of his mansion, his cars, his charity events. Smiling, confident, powerful, and rich. Very rich. Lily felt something burn in her chest. He had everything. Everything. And he left us? He left Mom? Rose looked more confused than angry. It says he became rich later. Maybe he wasn't like this before. I don't care, Lily snapped. He still abandoned us. He let Mom suffer. Rose stared at the screen again. We should know the full story, Lily. We need to hear all sides. Lily shook her head. I just want to know why he didn't want us. Rose placed her hand gently on Lily's arm. Let's find our birth mother first. She deserves to be found. They typed again. Sarah Martinez. They added their birth city. A list of addresses, numbers, and records appeared. The girls stared at the screen. That's her, Rose whispered, pointing at an address in a poor neighborhood across town. Lily swallowed hard. We have to go. But Mama Grace, she'll never let us leave alone. We have to do this ourselves. The next morning, Grace thought they were going to the library again. The twins took the bus instead, their small bodies squeezed between adults, their hands gripping the metal poles tightly. The entire ride, they didn't speak. They were too scared and too determined. When they stepped off the bus, the neighborhood looked very different from the quiet street they lived on. Buildings were cracked, windows broken, walls covered with old paint and messy writing. People walked fast with tired faces. Rose felt her chest tighten. She lives here? Lily nodded quietly. They walked down the narrow sidewalk, watching stray cats run between trash cans. Finally, they reached the building. Apartment 3C. The hallway smelled like damp walls and old newspapers. They climbed the stairs slowly, listening to the distant sound of someone arguing behind another door. But they didn't knock. They waited outside until morning, hiding behind the staircase, watching. At 6 a.m., the door opened. A woman stepped out, carrying a cleaning bag. She looked tired, her shoulders slumped, dark circles under her eyes. But even through exhaustion, she had a soft beauty in her face. The kind of beauty that came from strength, not makeup. Rose whispered, That's her. Sarah didn't see them. She walked quickly, already late for work. The girls followed from a distance. First, she cleaned office buildings, scrubbing floors and wiping desks. Her hands moved fast, but her face stayed sad, distant. Then she worked as a waitress at a crowded diner, taking orders with a forced smile. After that, she sold flowers on the street corner, her small stall barely holding itself together. The twins watched from afar the entire day. Their hearts sank deeper with every hour. She works so hard, Rose whispered, her eyes filling with tears. She's all alone, Lily said, her voice breaking. And our father lives in a mansion. By evening, Sarah walked back home with slow, tired steps. They followed quietly, staying hidden. She entered her small apartment. Through a cracked window, the girls saw her sit at a tiny table. She ate instant noodles silently, not even bothering to turn on the TV. Then she opened a drawer. She took out something, an old ultrasound picture. The same one from years ago. She touched it gently, tears filling her eyes. My babies, she whispered softly. I wonder if you're happy. I hope you don't hate me. I pray for you every night. The twins outside the window covered their mouths to stop themselves from crying out loud. They couldn't hold back anymore. The next afternoon, when Sarah was arranging flowers at her small stall, Lily stepped forward. Excuse me, "Are you Sarah Martinez?" she asked with a shaking voice. Sarah looked up. "Yes. Can I help you?" Rose took a deep breath. We were born on March 15th, 8 years ago." Sarah froze. The flowers fell from her hands. Her lips trembled. "No, no, it can't be," Lily whispered. "We found your note." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth as tears spilled down her cheeks. "My babies," she whispered in disbelief. "My daughters." She dropped to her knees and reached out with shaking hands, not to grab them, but to touch their faces gently, as if afraid they would disappear. But Lily stepped back. "Why did you leave us?" she cried. "Why?" Sarah's tears flowed faster. She opened her mouth to speak. But before she could say a single word, someone else appeared behind her. A shadow she wasn't expecting. And the truth, the full, painful truth, was about to come out. Sarah's hands were still shaking as she reached toward the twins, but before her fingers could even brush against them, a voice came from behind. "Sarah, what's going on?" The girls turned around quickly. A middle-aged woman stood there with groceries in her hands, staring at the scene in confusion. Sarah wiped her tears fast and stood up, trying to compose herself. "It's nothing, Mrs. Lopez," Sarah whispered. "Just someone asking directions." But her voice cracked, and her eyes were too red for that lie to work. Mrs. Lopez stepped closer, looking from Sarah to the twins. She could see the resemblance, the eyes, the shape of their faces, even the way the girls stood close to each other like a protective shield. Her expression softened. "Are these the children you always talk about?" Sarah closed her eyes tightly as more tears escaped. She nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "They're my daughters." The twins didn't speak. They couldn't. Their throats felt locked. Mrs. Lopez placed a gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder. "I'll leave you three alone." She walked away slowly, giving them space. Sarah turned back to the twins, wiping her face. "I'm sorry you had to see me like this. I'm sorry for everything." Rose stepped a little closer. "Mom, we saw how hard you work. We saw everything." Those words hit Sarah harder than anything. Her knees weakened again, and she sat down on the small sidewalk step. She covered her face with both hands and cried quietly. "I never stopped thinking about you," she managed to say. "Not even for one day." Lily's voice was still full of hurt. "Then why didn't you come back for us? You left us there, alone." Sarah lowered her hands slowly. The pain in her eyes felt almost physical. "I left you because I had nothing. No money, no home, no food. And the people who were supposed to help didn't." She hesitated, then looked away. "Your father didn't want us." Lily clenched her fists. "We know. We saw his name. He's rich now. Super rich. And he still abandoned us." Sarah looked down. "He wasn't rich back then. But his father, he had power. And he made sure I had nowhere to go." Rose sat beside her gently. "We saw how you live now. We saw your apartment. You barely have anything." Sarah laughed weakly through her tears. "I don't need much. I just need to survive." Lily crossed her arms. "He lives in a mansion, and you're fighting for food. How is that fair?" Sarah didn't answer. She just stared at the ground. "Do you know what hurt the most?" she finally said. "Not the hunger, not losing my mother, not the cold nights. What hurt the most was imagining you two growing up without knowing how much I loved you." Rose's hand slowly reached out and touched Sarah's. Lily stayed still, but her eyes softened. Sarah took a shaky breath. The day I left you at the orphanage, I felt like my soul broke. I kept thinking maybe someone kind would take you. Someone who could give you more than I ever could. Rose smiled a little through her tears. Someone did. That made Sarah freeze. What? She whispered. We were adopted, Rose said. By an amazing woman. Her name is Grace. Sarah's face brightened a little, like a small sun rising through clouds. Grace. She repeated the name softly. Is she kind to you? Lily finally spoke. She's the best mother anyone could ask for. Sarah smiled, her lips trembling. Then maybe I made the right choice, after all. The three of them sat there for a long time, just breathing, letting the moment sink in. But the peace didn't last long. When a black car slowly turned onto the street, the girls didn't think much of it. Cars came and went all the time. But Sarah's body suddenly stiffened. She stood up quickly, wiping her tears fast. No, not now, she whispered. The twins stood too, confused. Mom, what's wrong? The car stopped right beside them. The door opened. A tall man in a suit stepped out. He wasn't young. His hair was graying at the sides, his face sharp, his eyes cold. Lily felt her stomach twist. She recognized him from photos. It was Mr. Chen, David Chen's father. Sarah's breath shook. What are you doing here? She asked, her voice small. Mr. Chen smirked. I came to ease my curiosity. Rose slowly moved closer to Lily. She didn't like his eyes. They felt dangerous. Sarah stepped in front of the twins protectively. Get away from them. He ignored her and looked at the twins. So, these are the girls. Girls? Lily snapped. We have names. Mr. Chen raised an eyebrow. Spirited, just like your mother. Sarah stepped closer. Leave them alone, please. They don't need your trouble. Mr. Chen scoffed. Trouble? I'm here to remind you of your place. You were supposed to disappear. But instead, you drag yourself into my son's life again. He glared at Sarah. And now you involve his children? The girls stared at him in shock. Rose whispered. He knew about us? Mr. Chen didn't even blink. Of course I knew. I always knew. Lily's voice cracked with anger. And you forced our mom to leave us? Mr. Chen sighed like he was tired of hearing nonsense. I did what had to be done. My son had a future. He couldn't ruin it with a girl who had nothing to offer. Sarah shouted, I loved him. And he loved you, Mr. Chen said sharply. That was the problem. Lily stepped forward, fists clenched. You destroyed our family. Mr. Chen looked at her like she was an insect. Families like mine don't mix with people like you. But before Lily could explode with anger, Rose grabbed her hand tightly. Sarah looked desperate. Please leave. You've done enough. Mr. Chen leaned closer to Sarah. You stay away from David. He doesn't need you showing up after 8 years. Sarah whispered. I didn't go to him. They came to me. Mr. Chen turned toward the twins again. You two should forget everything. Forget this woman. Forget the past. Go back to your lives and stay out of ours. Lily's eyes burned. We're not going anywhere until we get answers. Mr. Chen smirked. You think David will welcome you? You think he wants 2 children suddenly appearing? He won't believe you. He never believed her. Sarah shut her eyes as if stabbed. Rose stepped in front of her like a tiny shield. We don't need him to believe us. We want the truth. And we want our mom. Mr. Chen's jaw tightened. This conversation is over, he said finally. He got back into his car. The door slammed shut. The engine roared. and the car drove away fast. The street grew quiet again. Sarah sank onto the step, shaking. The girls rushed to her, wrapping their arms around her shoulders. "I'm so sorry," Sarah whispered. "I didn't want you to meet him. Not like this." Rose held her tightly. "It's okay. We're here now." Lily nodded. "And we won't let anyone hurt you again." Sarah looked at them, tears falling silently. "You're so strong," she whispered. "Stronger than I ever was." Lily took a deep breath. "We need to see him." Sarah froze. "Who?" Rose whispered. "Our father." Sarah's eyes filled with fear. "No, he hurt me. He left us. He will hurt you too." Lily shook her head. "We'll decide that ourselves." Rose took Sarah's hand. "Mom, we need answers." Sarah stared at them for a long moment. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Then I'm coming with you." The bus ride to the rich part of the city felt endless. The twins sat close to Sarah, their hands wrapped around her arms like they were scared she might disappear if they let go. Sarah kept glancing at them, at their little faces pressed against the cold bus window. She looked scared, worried, and guilty all at once. The truth was simple. She had never imagined standing beside her daughters again, and now she was terrified of losing them a second time. The city changed as the bus moved forward. Old buildings turned into tall glass towers. Broken sidewalks became polished stone paths. Cars grew more expensive. People looked busier, colder. Sarah shrank a little in her seat. She didn't fit in here. She never had. And she especially didn't belong near the Chen family. Lily noticed her worry. "Mom, we're right here. Don't be scared." Sarah forced a smile. "I'm not scared for myself. I'm scared for you." Rose rested her head on Sarah's shoulder. "We can handle it. We're not babies anymore." Sarah brushed her fingers through Rose's hair. "No, you're strong, both of you, but he can still hurt you without meaning to." Lily looked out the window, anger heating her voice. "He already did." When the bus finally stopped, they stepped onto a clean sidewalk. Everything around them looked expensive. Shiny windows, tall buildings, fancy cars parked in neat rows. Sarah held their hands tighter as they walked. She remembered walking on this street once before, years ago, wearing her simple clothes, feeling the stares of people who knew she didn't belong. And now she was back. Lily pulled out the piece of paper she had printed from the library computer. "This is the address of his company, floor 43. Sarah stopped walking for a moment. "He works there? On the top floors?" Rose nodded. "Yeah, he's the CEO now." Sarah blinked, surprised. "CEO?" She had no idea that the same David who once cried in the rain had turned into one of the richest men in the country. Rose touched Sarah's arm. "Mom, let's go." They walked toward the tall glass building. Inside, everything shined. Marble floors, gold-colored elevators, people wearing suits that probably cost more than all of Sarah's belongings combined. The receptionist stared at them the second they entered. First at the twins, then at Sarah's worn-out clothes, then at the mixture of fear and determination on their faces. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked with a fake smile. "We're here to see David Chen," Lily said boldly. The receptionist's smile vanished instantly. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," Rose said softly. "Then you cannot see Mr. Chen," the woman replied sharply. Lily stepped forward, her eyes burning. "We're his daughters." The receptionist laughed, a little too loudly. "I'm sorry, sweetie. That's not possible." Sarah stepped in front of the girls. "Please, we just need a few minutes. It's important." The receptionist's eyes softened for a second. Sarah looked exhausted, desperate, like a mother holding on to her last hope. But rules were rules. "I'm sorry," the woman repeated. "I can't let you in." Rose tugged on Sarah's sleeve. "Mom, what do we do now?" Before Sarah could answer, Lily grabbed Rose's hand and whispered, "We go." And she ran. Right past the receptionist, right toward the private elevator. Rose shouted, "Lily, wait!" and ran after her. Sarah gasped and followed them, her heart pounding. Security guards yelled and rushed toward them, but someone else reached them first. A tall security officer stepped in front of the elevator, blocking their way. Lily skidded to a stop and glared up at him. "Let us through. We need to see him." "No," the officer said firmly. "Step away." Rose tugged on Lily's sleeve again. "Lily, maybe we should—" But before she could finish speaking, another voice echoed across the lobby. "Let them go." Everyone turned. A middle-aged woman walked toward them. She wore a clean, simple uniform with the company logo. She wasn't a manager or a boss, just a cleaner pushing a supply cart. But her eyes were kind, and her smile was soft. "Mrs. Chen?" the receptionist whispered, shocked. The woman nodded politely. "I'll take them up." Sarah stared in confusion. "Mrs. Chen? You're—" "David's mother," the woman said with a sad smile. "Well, stepmother, technically." Lily whispered, "You're his mom?" She nodded. "I've known about you two for years. Come with me." The security guards stepped back immediately. The receptionist bowed her head in embarrassment. The girls and Sarah followed the woman to a smaller elevator in the back. Once the doors closed, the building noise faded, leaving them in a bubble of silence. Sarah finally spoke. "Why are you helping us?" Mrs. Chen's smile weakened. "Because I should have helped 8 years ago." Lily looked up, confused. "You knew about us? About Mom?" Mrs. Chen nodded. "I knew everything. The pregnancy, the pressure your grandfather put on David, the threats, the money, all of it." Sarah swallowed hard. "I thought no one in that family had a heart." Mrs. Chen sighed. "I wasn't strong enough back then. Your grandfather controlled everything, even David. And I stayed silent when I should have spoken." Rose touched her hand gently. "Why didn't you tell David?" Tears filled the woman's eyes. "Because David thought you left him by choice. His father told him you took the money and disappeared." Sarah covered her mouth, heart breaking all over again. He believed that?" Mrs. Chen nodded painfully. "He trusted his father. He always wanted to impress him. He was weak back then. Afraid to fight for himself. Afraid to fight for you." Lily clenched her fists. "He still left her." "He did," Mrs. Chen whispered. "And he has paid for it every day since." They rode the elevator in silence for a few seconds as those words settled in their hearts. The doors opened. They stepped into a long, quiet hallway lined with expensive art. "He's in his office," Mrs. Chen said softly. "Room 4301. Sarah froze. Her breaths came faster. I don't know if I can do this." Rose held her hand. "We're with you." Lily walked ahead, her face determined. "Let's go." The hallway seemed too long. Their footsteps echoed like small waves. The floor beneath them felt too soft, too rich, too far from the world Sarah had struggled in. Every step closer made Sarah's heart feel heavier. Finally, they reached the door. Sarah stared at the golden nameplate. David Chen, CEO. Her legs shook, her eyes filled with tears. Lily raised her fist to knock. Before she could, Sarah grabbed her wrist gently. "Wait," Rose whispered. "Mom?" Sarah wiped her eyes quickly. I'm scared. I've imagined this moment for years. Sometimes I wanted to yell at him. Sometimes I wanted to hug him. Sometimes I wanted to forget he ever existed. Lily lowered her hand slowly. Mom, whatever happens, you're not alone. Sarah nodded shakily. Then the door swung open. David Chen stepped out. He froze. The folder in his hand slipped and fell. His eyes widened as he stared at Sarah first, her tired face, on her worn clothing, her trembling hands. Then he looked at the twins, their eyes, their cheeks, their small noses, their faces. He saw himself in them instantly. His breath caught. His voice broke. Sarah? She looked at him, tears spilling down her face. David. He whispered the girls' names without even being told. Lily. Rose. The hallway went silent. Years of pain, guilt, anger, and memories pressed between them. Lily stared at him, anger burning through her chest. You left us. David shook his head slowly. I didn't know. I thought. Rose stepped forward, her voice breaking. You thought Mom took the money and abandoned you? David's face twisted. Yes, that's what I was told. Sarah stepped closer, her voice shaking with hurt. Your father threatened me. He threatened my sick mother. He asked me to take care of the pregnancy. He said he'd ruin my family. I waited for you to stand by me, David, but you didn't. David swallowed, his eyes filling with sudden, crushing guilt. He told me, you left because you didn't want a poor life. He told me you took the money willingly. Sarah's voice trembled with anger. And you believed him instead of me? David's eyes dropped to the floor. I was scared. I was weak. I was stupid. Lily stepped forward, tears burning her eyes. While you were busy being scared, Mom was giving birth alone. She was starving, working 3 jobs, losing her mom, and we were left at an orphanage. Rose wiped her face. We were babies, and she still tried to give us love. David felt like the ground was falling beneath him. His knees weakened. He pressed his hand over his mouth to hold back a sob. I didn't know, he whispered. If I had known, I would have come for you. I swear. Lily shook her head. You didn't fight for us then. Why should we believe you now? David looked at Sarah. I'm sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry. Sarah stepped back, trembling. Sorry doesn't fix 8 years of pain. David closed his eyes, tears finally falling. I know, and I don't expect forgiveness, but please, let me be a part of your lives now. Let me try to make things right. Lily opened her mouth to shout, but Rose grabbed her hand. Rose whispered, let him finish. David knelt down slowly in front of the girls. This powerful billionaire, someone the world feared, was now crying openly, his voice breaking into pieces. If you hate me, I'll accept it, he said. If you want me gone, I'll leave. But please, let me know you. Let me try. Even if it's just a little. The twins looked at each other, then at Sarah, then at David. The air felt heavy. No one knew what the right answer was. All they knew was that their lives had changed forever in this hallway. And this was only the beginning. David stayed kneeling on the soft carpet of the hallway, his expensive suit wrinkled, but he didn't care. His hands were shaking, and his eyes stayed locked on the twins as if he feared they might disappear again. The building around them was silent. Even the workers who passed by slowed down, sensing something important was happening. Lily stared at him with anger she could barely control. Rose looked torn between confusion and sympathy. And Sarah stood frozen, her heart breaking all over again, at the sight of the man who once promised her the world, and then left her to face it alone. David finally rose to his feet, wiping his face quickly. He looked older up close, tired, guilty, and weighed down by years of regret. But he tried to steady his voice as he spoke. "Can we talk inside?" he asked softly. Lily wanted to shout no, but Rose tugged on her hand, whispering, "Just hear him, please." Sarah took a shaky breath and nodded. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't trust. It was simply a chance to hear what he had to say. David pushed open the large office door. The room inside was huge, floor-to-ceiling windows, a wide desk, leather couches, and city views that stretched out endlessly. The twins walked in slowly, feeling small in the giant space. Sarah stayed close behind them, her hands gripping the strap of her old purse tightly. David cleared some papers off a table and motioned for them to sit. The girls sat on one couch. Sarah sat beside them. David sat across from them, still unable to look them directly in the eyes for more than a few seconds. Rose was the first to break the silence. "Why didn't you come looking for us? After we were born?" David's lips trembled. "Because I didn't know you were born. I thought Sarah left the city with the money, that she didn't want a family with me." Sarah felt heat rush to her face. "If you thought I didn't want you, why didn't you try calling? Or searching? Or anything?" David swallowed hard. "I tried calling for a month, but your number had been disconnected. Your apartment was empty. And my father told me you had moved on with your life." Sarah shook her head in disbelief. "Moved on? I was living in fear every day. I couldn't even afford food." David's voice cracked. "I know now. I didn't know then. I wasn't strong enough to stand up to him. I was scared of losing everything he controlled." Lily snapped. "And we weren't worth fighting for?" David flinched, as if she had hit him. "You were worth everything. I just didn't know. I didn't even know you were actually born. I thought—" Lily cut him off. "You thought wrong. And because you listened to him, Mom had to suffer." Sarah gently placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. "Sweetheart, let him speak." Lily's eyes filled with tears she didn't want to show. She looked away. David took a slow breath. "Your grandfather controlled everything. My job, my home, my reputation. I grew up living under his rules. When he said something, it felt like law to me." Sarah scoffed. "You weren't a child. You were a grown man." David nodded, shame in his eyes. "Yes. And I was a coward. I know that." The room fell silent again. Rose, always the softer one, leaned forward. "When did you find out the truth?" David rubbed his hands together nervously. 4 years ago." Sarah looked up sharply. 4 years?" David nodded painfully. "Yes. 4 years ago my stepmother told me everything." Lily stood abruptly. "And you still didn't come?" David stood too, his voice breaking. "Because I didn't know where you were. The orphanage records were sealed. Adoption files were private. I hired people to search, but Grace had moved houses, changed numbers, and the only clue I had was a name. Lily and Rose. No last name, no address." Sarah closed her eyes, tears gathering. Grace must have changed their last names during adoption. David whispered, "I looked for you. I swear I did." Rose sat quietly, her fingers curling into the couch. "Why didn't you come to find our mom?" David exhaled shakily. "Because I thought she hated me. Thought she never wanted to see me again." Sarah's voice was soft, but filled with years of pain. "I never hated you, David. I hated what you did. I hated how you didn't protect us. But I never hated you." David blinked several times to keep his tears from falling. I'm sorry. Sarah, I'm so sorry I didn't fight for you. Lily suddenly moved to the window, staring outside at the huge world below. Didn't come here for apologies, she said sharply. We came because we wanted answers. David nodded, his voice barely audible. You deserve them. Rose whispered. Do you want us now? David's answer came instantly. More than anything. Lily turned around, her eyes burning. You didn't want us then. David stepped toward her but stopped when she stepped back. I didn't know you existed. That's the difference. I swear, if I had known you were real, if I had known Sarah gave birth, I would have done everything to find you. Sarah wiped her tears quietly. She didn't defend him. She didn't blame him. She just listened. Rose asked softly, Do you love us now? David's voice broke completely. I have loved the idea of you since the moment Sarah told me she was pregnant. I imagined your faces every night. I imagined teaching you to ride bikes, walking you to school, reading bedtime stories. I imagined everything. And when I found out the truth, I was too late. Lily looked away again, but her lips trembled. David wiped his face. I know I can't erase the past. I can't undo your pain. I can't change what your mother went through. But I want to try to be in your lives now. I want to try to know you, to help you, to protect you. If you'll let me. Sarah finally spoke, her voice steady. What about your father? Will he accept them? David shook his head firmly. My father has no control over my life anymore. I cut ties with him 3 years ago. Everything I have now, I built myself. Sarah stared at him in surprise. You cut ties? Yes, David said softly. Because of what he did. Because of what he hid. I couldn't forgive him. So I left his company, built my own, and never spoke to him again. Lily whispered. Does he know about us now? Yes, David said. And he doesn't get a say in anything anymore. Another long silence filled the room. Then David wiped his face again and gently asked, Can I take you all to lunch? Somewhere quiet? We can talk. Slowly. No pressure. Lily shook her head instantly. No fancy places. David nodded. Anywhere you want. Rose stood up nervously. Can we bring Mama Grace too? David smiled softly. Of course. She raised you. I owe her more than I can ever repay. Sarah smiled for the first time. Grace will like that. Lily walked closer to her mother and whispered, Mom, are you okay? Sarah nodded slowly. I'm overwhelmed, but I'm okay. We're together. That's what matters. David watched them quietly, his heart aching with a mix of guilt and hope. He walked to his desk and grabbed his coat. There's something I want to show you before we leave. He opened a drawer and took out a small wooden box. He walked back to them and handed it to Sarah. What is this? Sarah asked. He swallowed. Open it. Sarah opened the box slowly. Inside was a tiny silver necklace with 2 small charms shaped like flowers. A lily. A rose. Sarah froze. I bought it the day you told me you were having twins, David said softly. I was going to give it to you as a promise that I would protect them, love you. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she touched the charms. I kept it all these years, David whispered, even when I thought I'd never see you again. Rose walked forward slowly and touched the necklace. It's beautiful. Lily's eyes softened for the first time that day, but she stayed quiet. David took a careful breath. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but can I at least try? Rose nodded slowly, tears forming. I want to try. Lily didn't respond. Sarah placed a gentle hand on Lily's back. "Sweetheart?" Lily finally looked up at David, her eyes wet. "Trying doesn't erase what happened. But maybe we can talk." "Slowly." David nodded quickly, grateful. "Slowly is okay. Whatever pace you want." The tension softened just a little. Enough for hope to squeeze inside. David led them out of the office. As they stepped into the elevator together, Sarah held the twins close. For the first time in 7 years, they were standing between both their parents. A new chapter had just begun. But Sarah didn't know that someone else was already watching them. Someone who wasn't ready to let the past go. Someone who planned to stop this reunion before it even began. The restaurant David chose wasn't fancy. It wasn't loud or crowded or full of rich people wearing clothes worth more than a house. It was a small family place with simple wooden tables, warm lights, and the smell of fresh soup and bread. He wanted a quiet space, somewhere the girls wouldn't feel judged for their clothes or their age, and somewhere Sarah wouldn't feel out of place. When they walked inside, Grace was already there. She stood up quickly the moment she saw the girls, her face filling with both confusion and fear. She rushed toward them, checking their faces like any mother would after her kids disappeared without warning. "Where were you?" she cried. "I was so worried." Lily and Rose hugged her tightly. "We're sorry, Mama Grace. We had to find the truth." Grace looked up at Sarah, then at David, then back at the twins again. "What truth?" she whispered. Sarah held Grace's hands. "Grace, this is David, the twins' birth father." Grace froze. Her eyes widened, her body tensed. She didn't let go of the girls. David nodded respectfully. "You're the woman who raised my daughters. Thank you. For everything." Grace looked at him with mixed emotions, anger, fear, and confusion. "They're not just your daughters, they're mine too." David nodded. "I know. And I'm not here to take them away. I'm here to learn about them, and to be better, if they let me." Grace relaxed a little. She looked down at the beam. "Twins. Is that what you girls want?" Rose nodded. "We want answers, and we want a chance to know him." Lily hesitated, then whispered, "Just slowly." Grace took a deep breath. "Okay, if that's what you want, I'll stay with you." David pulled out a chair for all of them. Nobody ate much at first. Everyone was too nervous, too overwhelmed. But slowly, conversation began to flow. Rose talked about school. Lily talked about drawing. David listened like every word was gold. Sarah shared small memories from before. The good ones, not the painful ones. David smiled softly, remembering them too. Grace watched quietly, her protective heart relaxing piece by piece, as she saw the way David looked at the girls, not with ownership, but with love he had held inside for years. Everything was going better than anyone expected. Until the restaurant door opened. The air changed. A shadow stepped in. Mr. Chen, David's father. His cold eyes scanned the room until they landed on the table. On David, on Sarah, on the twins. On the family he worked so hard to destroy. He marched toward them, ignoring the waiter calling after him. People around the restaurant fell silent. Chairs stopped moving. Conversations died. Even the twins felt their small bodies go tense. Sarah's fingers shook as she grabbed both girls closer. Grace straightened her back protectively. David stood up immediately. His voice was hard. "What are you doing here?" Mr. Chen's voice was sharp. "Fixing your mistake." Lily felt her chest tighten. Rose moved under Grace's arm. Sarah whispered, "Please, not here." But Mr. Chen ignored her completely. He pointed at the girls with the same coldness he showed Sarah years ago. "This ends now," he said. "Those children do not belong in our world. Neither does she." David stepped between his father and the table. "Don't talk about them like that." Mr. Chen's face hardened. "They are a risk to everything you've built, everything you've worked for. If the media finds out, your reputation will shatter. Investors will panic. You will lose everything." David stared at him. "I don't care." "You should," Mr. Chen replied. "Because I'm not letting you throw your life away for a mistake made 8 years ago." Lily stood up suddenly, shaking with anger. "We're not a mistake." Mr. Chen didn't even look at her. "Your mother was a nobody. And you too—" He didn't finish, because David grabbed his arm, hard. "Don't talk about them that way ever again," David said through clenched teeth. Mr. Chen pulled his arm back, shocked. "You're choosing them over your own father?" David nodded slowly. "I chose them the moment I realized the truth." Mr. Chen looked around the room, furious. "You're acting like a child." Sarah stood up too, her voice weak but firm. "Leave us alone." Mr. Chen turned toward her, glaring. "You ruined my son's future once. Won't let you ruin it again." David's voice became sharp. "She didn't ruin anything. You did." Mr. Chen looked stunned. Sarah grabbed Lily and Rose protectively. Grace stood in front of them like a shield. David walked closer to his father until they were face to face. "You lied to me," he said. "You broke their lives. You broke mine. And you destroyed a woman who loved me. I will never forgive you for that." Mr. Chen's face turned red. "I did what I had to do." "No," David whispered. "You did what you wanted. And now you're alone because of it." The restaurant was silent. Mr. Chen looked at the twins. They were staring back at him, not afraid, but angry, disappointed, and strong. For the first time, something in his eyes softened, just a little. Maybe it was guilt, maybe regret. But it didn't matter. He turned to leave. At the door, he said one last thing. "David, don't expect my support." David replied without hesitation. "I don't need it." Mr. Chen walked out, and for the first time in many years, the door closed on his power. David sat back down slowly. His hands shook as he covered his face. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he whispered. Lily sat down too, her heart pounding. "It's not your fault." Sarah sat beside him. "Some people never change." Rose leaned against Sarah. "But some do." David lifted his head, his eyes soft. "I will be better. I promise." The rest of the meal continued quietly. No shouting, no drama, just conversation, just healing, just slow understanding. When they finally walked out of the restaurant, the sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. The twins walked holding Sarah and Grace's hands. David walked beside them, still unsure if he deserved to be this close, but grateful to be allowed near them at all. Outside, David knelt again in front of the twins. "I know this can't fix everything," he said gently, "but I'd like to be part of your life. Not to take you away, not to replace anyone. Just to be your dad, if you ever want that." Rose nodded slowly. "I want that." Lily didn't speak for a moment. She looked at Sarah, then Grace, then David. Finally, she whispered, "You hurt us. But you're trying now. I want to try too." David's eyes filled with tears as he pulled both girls into a careful hug. Sarah watched, her heart aching and healing at the same time. Grace smiled softly. Families weren't perfect. Some broke. Some healed. Some rebuilt themselves piece by piece. They began walking toward the bus stop together. Sarah looked at David. "Do you want to walk with us?" David nodded, smiling. "More than anything." And the four of them walked together, not as strangers, not as enemies, but as a family, trying to rebuild what life tried to destroy. When they reached the bus stop, Sarah looked down at the twins. "Girls, are you happy?" Lily squeezed her hand. "We're getting there." Rose leaned her head on Sarah's arm. "We're finally whole." David stood beside them quietly, soaking in the moment like a man who had been waiting 8 long years to breathe. As the bus arrived, the twins ran up the steps first. Sarah followed. Grace helped them all settle their seats. David didn't get on. He stood outside and waved as the bus doors closed. "See you tomorrow?" Rose called out. David nodded. "See you tomorrow." And the bus drove away. David watched it disappear, his heart full for the first time in years. Behind him, the city lights flickered on, promising a new beginning. Not perfect, not easy, but real. A beginning built on truth. A beginning built on courage. A beginning built on love that survived even after being broken. Sometimes the greatest truth is simple. Love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, even when it's late, even when it's hard, even when everything feels broken. Family is not made by blood alone, but by the courage to choose each other, again and again. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional stories that remind us how strong love can be, even in the hardest moments. Leave a comment. Family means love.